The driving force behind a vehicle's direction is the steering column. It connects the steering wheel to the front wheels, but despite the name, steering isn't the steering column's only job. It also houses the turn signal switch and a tilt mechanism to adjust the angle of the steering wheel. This company makes custom steering columns, the kind you order when building your own classic car or truck. For the main shaft of the column, an automated bandsaw slices steel tubing, 2 at a time, to a specific length. This belt sander smooths out the rough edges. The next machine forms the shaft into a specific shape that will engage and turn with the steering wheel. A computer-guided laser cutter makes the steel housing that'll cover the steering column's upper components. It cuts holes for the various control levers that'll connect to the steering column. The upper housing now goes onto a device that holds it steady while a belt grinder removes any surface imperfections. Meanwhile, workers weld together the 2 steel pieces that make up the steering column's lower housing. Then, to make the steering column look sleek, they attach a steel cone using a fine welding torch. With an abrasive belt until it's barely noticeable. Then they do an overall polishing to make the entire surface smooth and ready to paint. They've attached a component called the lower yoke shaft to the main shaft made earlier. After greasing it, they snap an upper yoke shaft into it. These enable the shaft to pivot when you tilt the steering column. Here, they install a component in the lower housing to which they'll later attach the tilting mechanism. Once that's in place, they install a pull wire to help pull through the electrical system later on. Finally, they slide the shaft through the housing. A computer-controlled milling machine shapes the tilting mechanism's aluminum body. The next machine installs position-locking fingers, which allow the column to tilt when you pull the tilt lever, then re-engage to lock in the selected position. This press installs bearings to make the turning process smooth. Now the upper section joins the lower section. They attach with 2 pins that allow the column to pivot. A thick steel spring supports the column, so when the fingers disengage, the column doesn't just drop into the driver's lap. Next, they install the column's upper housing. That's the part with the holes for the levers to control the tilt, the turn signals, and the emergency flashers. Remember that pull wire? They tape the signal switches and wiring to it, then pull them through the column. They'll later cushion this exit hole with a rubber grommet to prevent any chafing. Next, they install the horn cam. It passes power from the horn to the steering wheel to enable honking. Using this tool, they lock in a retaining clip to hold everything together. All the wiring that passes through the steering column connects to a plug. You just insert it into the vehicle's electrical system. These steering columns come in a choice of finishes. You can also buy an unfinished column and paint it yourself. After installing the column, you just add a steering wheel, then mount the levers and knobs included in the kit. From that point on, you're in the driver's seat.